As I walked toward my son's house with a bottle of wine in my hands, dreaming of a warm family evening, my lawyer suddenly called. "Sir, you need to look at this immediately." "Not now," I waved him off. "I'm going to James's for dinner." "Wait, this concerns him specifically. Your son. You won't believe what he's planning." I was shocked. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. The wine bottle felt heavier than usual as I carried it up the stone walkway to James's house. North Phoenix sprawled around me, all desert landscaping and red tile roofs baking under the afternoon sun. I'd baked the cookies myself that morning, oatmeal raisin, James's childhood favorite. Small gestures mattered when you were trying to maintain connection with your only son. Amanda opened the door before I could knock. "Percy, right on time." Her smile was wide, but something about it reminded me of the grin on a coyote I'd once seen cornering a rabbit behind my auto shop. "Wouldn't miss it," I said, stepping inside where the air conditioning hit like a cold slap. James emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. "Dad, good to see you." We shook hands. When had we stopped hugging? And he gestured toward the dining room. "Lunch is almost ready." The house had that staged quality, like a furniture showroom. Everything matched. Nothing looked lived in. I set the wine and cookies on the granite counter and settled onto their cream-colored couch, immediately worried about leaving marks. "You look tired," Amanda said, sitting across from me. Her eyes moved over my face with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "Are you sleeping okay? Getting enough rest?" "I sleep fine. It's just that at your age, health becomes so important." She leaned forward. "Have you been forgetting things lately?" I stared at her. "Forgetting things?" "Amanda means we worry about you." James cut in quickly. "Living alone, running those shops by yourself." "I've run Wilson's Auto for 30 years. "Exactly." James sat beside Amanda, and their knees touched, some silent signal passing between them. "That's a long time to carry everything yourself. Don't you think it's time to bring someone else in? Share the load?" I watched him carefully. My son had never shown interest in the business before. He'd gone into real estate, made his own way. "What are you really asking, James?" "Just concerned, Dad." His tongue darted across his lips. "What if something happened? Does anyone else know how to access your accounts? The safe deposit boxes? Have you updated your estate planning recently?" The questions came too fast, too specific. Amanda's hand squeezed James's arm, another signal. They'd rehearsed this. "I'm managing fine," I said slowly. "Of course you are." Amanda's voice had gone sharp. "But James is right. Families should look out for each other." Lunch was salmon and asparagus. I barely tasted it. Every time I looked up, James was watching me. When I excused myself to use the bathroom, I heard urgent whispering from the dining room. Walking back, I caught James's eyes following my every step, measuring something I couldn't name. "More wine?" Amanda offered, already pouring before I answered. I made it through dessert, some elaborate chocolate thing, and stood to leave. "This was nice. We should do it again." "You're not driving home alone, are you?" Amanda's question came out like an accusation. "Maybe James should follow you, just to be safe." "I've been driving for 45 years. "Of course." James walked me to the door. "Call when you get home? So we know you made it okay?" I nodded, suddenly desperate to leave. Reaching for my keys on the side table, my hand brushed against something that slipped from the couch cushion into my jacket pocket. I didn't realize what it was until I was already in my truck. Door closed, engine running. Amanda's phone. Sleek and silver, the screen lighting up in my palm. I should have gone back inside immediately. Instead, I sat there, staring at the notification that had just appeared. Dr. Morrison confirmed appointment for evaluation. Filing next week, as discussed. My hands gripped the steering wheel. The implications crashed over me like a wave, drowning everything else. Evaluation, filing, discussed. I looked back at the house. Through the front window, I could see James and Amanda, in the living room, standing close together, talking intensely. I shifted into drive and pulled away slowly, watching them in my rearview mirror. Neither looked toward the street. They hadn't noticed yet. The phone sat heavy in my passenger seat as I drove home through Phoenix traffic, my mind already racing through possibilities, each one worse than the last. Something was very wrong, and whatever it was, it had been planned carefully, discussed with doctors and lawyers, scheduled for next week. My own son. The realization settled over me like a shroud as I turned onto my street. The phone's screen dark now, but its presence screaming danger with every silent second. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. Amanda's phone sat on my nightstand like a loaded weapon, while I lay there staring at my ceiling fan's lazy rotations. At some point around midnight, I stopped pretending and picked it up. The passcode screen mocked me. I tried the obvious combinations, birthdays, anniversaries, and on the sixth attempt, got lucky. Their wedding date. The messages opened like a door into another world. Conversations with someone named Robert Hutchins, Esquire. Another thread with Dr. Morrison's office coordinator. All of it, everything spelled out in casual text shorthand that made my blood run cold. Competency evaluation procedures in one message. Conservatorship paperwork ready in another. A thread from 3 weeks ago. Once we establish incompetence, full financial control transfers within 30 days. 3 weeks. They'd been planning this for at least 3 weeks. My coffee went cold on the kitchen table as dawn broke through my window. I'd read everything twice. The messages went back months. Not weeks. Months. Strategy discussions. Timeline adjustments. Amanda pushing to move faster. James urging patience. At 7 in the morning, I pulled out my own phone and started photographing. Every screen, every conversation, every date stamp. My hands stayed steady. 30 years running a business teaches you to document everything. By 9:30, I was back in my truck with Amanda's phone, driving across Phoenix toward their house. James would be at work. I'd return the phone to Amanda, watch her face, see if she'd reveal anything. Their street was quiet, drowsy with mid-morning stillness. I parked at the curb and walked up the stone pathway, phone in my jacket pocket. The day was already heating up, promising another scorcher. Then I heard James's voice, through the living room window, partially open to catch the breeze. His words carried clear and sharp. The lawyer said once Dad signs the medical consent form at dinner, we can fast-track the competency hearing. Dr. Morrison's report is already written. I froze on the walkway, my body pressed against the exterior wall beside the window. Amanda responded, her voice eager and bright. And the evaluation? He agreed to that? He doesn't know he's agreeing to anything. James laughed. Actually laughed. It's buried in the family trust paperwork I'll bring to dinner. The old man won't even read it carefully. And then? Amanda's excitement was palpable. Then Dr. Morrison evaluates him using the consent form Dad signed without knowing. Morrison's already been paid to find him incompetent. The hearing happens fast, maybe 2 weeks. Judge signs the conservatorship order, and everything transfers to me as his guardian. How long until we can access the money? The lawyer said once I have conservatorship, I control everything immediately. The business, the properties, all accounts. We'll need to maintain him somewhere, probably that care facility in Tempe. But that's cheap compared to what we're getting. I stopped breathing. My son was discussing warehousing me like unwanted furniture while stealing everything I'd built. When's the dinner? Amanda asked. I'm calling him tonight. Make it sound like reconciliation. He's desperate for family connection. It'll be easy. How much is it all worth? James paused. The lawyer estimates between 3 and 4 million total. The auto shops alone are worth 2 million, and the properties in Scottsdale have appreciated like crazy. My jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth might crack. 4 million, they'd calculated it. Estimated my worth like livestock at auction. I forced myself to move, walking backwards slowly, watching the window. Neither of them appeared. I reached my truck, climbed in, and drove away with my hands shaking on the wheel. The rest of the day disappeared into a fog. I sat in my home office, Amanda's phone on one side of my desk, my own phone on the other, the screenshots displayed on my computer screen, evidence, timeline, names. When James called that evening, I was ready. Dad, it's James. His voice was warm, concerned, completely false. Listen, I feel terrible about yesterday. Amanda and I talked, and we want to make things right. How about dinner here next Tuesday? Just family, a real conversation. I let 3 seconds of silence stretch between us, while I stared at the screenshot showing their conspiracy. That sounds good, son. I'd like that. Really? That's great. He sounded relieved, probably thinking I was still the naive old fool he expected. How about 7 o'clock? What time should I arrive? I kept my voice neutral, empty. 7's perfect. And Dad, I'm really glad we're doing this. Me too. I ended the call and sat in the darkness of my office, the glow from my computer screen illuminating the evidence of my son's betrayal. He thought he was setting a trap for me. He thought I'd walk in blind and sign away my life while he watched and smiled. But I'd seen the trap. I knew the bait. I understood the mechanism. And now, sitting alone in my house with proof of their conspiracy burning on my screen, I realized something that should have terrified me, but instead felt cold and clarifying. The war had begun. I just needed to fight it, smarter than they expected. Tuesday was 6 days away. 6 days to plan. 6 days to prepare. 6 days to show my son that underestimating his father was the worst mistake he'd ever make. The morning sun cut through my kitchen window as I dialed Richard Foster's office. My hand was steady now. All the shock burned away into something colder and harder. Foster and Associates. The receptionist's voice was crisp and professional. This is Percy Wilson. I need to see Richard today. It's urgent. A pause. Mr. Wilson, Richard's schedule is completely... Tell him it's about a family member trying to steal my business. Tell him I have evidence. 15 minutes later, Foster called back personally. Percy, what's going on? I need to see you this afternoon. I can't explain over the phone. I'll clear my schedule. Come at 2. I spent the morning printing screenshots, organizing them in a folder, preparing like I used to before important supplier negotiations. Treat it like business, I told myself. Remove the emotion. Foster's office occupied the 14th floor of a downtown Phoenix high-rise. I'd been there dozens of times over the past 15 years. Contract reviews, property acquisitions, business incorporations. Richard had always been steady, thorough, exactly what you wanted in an attorney. He stood when I entered, concern creasing his forehead. Percy, you look... Angry? I set the folder on his mahogany desk. That's accurate. I spread the screenshots across his desk methodically, pointing to specific messages. Foster leaned forward, his glasses sliding down his nose as he read. His expression shifted from curiosity to alarm to something approaching horror. When did you discover this? He asked quietly. 3 days ago. He picked up several screenshots, reading more carefully. Percy, this is serious. If they file a petition for guardianship and conservatorship before you protect your assets, the court could appoint a temporary conservator. You could lose access to your own bank accounts while this plays out. The words hit like a physical blow. How long do we have? Based on these messages, Foster scrolled through the images on his computer where I'd emailed them. Days, maybe a week. They mentioned filing next week. That was 2 days ago. We need to move now. He grabbed his phone, punching the intercom button. Janet, clear my afternoon. Prepare emergency trust documents, and cancel everything tomorrow morning. Foster pulled up Arizona statutes on his computer, walking me through the nightmare scenario. Once incompetency proceedings start, assets freeze pending evaluation, court-appointed examiners, psychological assessments, legal limbo that could stretch for months. We're going to create an irrevocable living trust, he explained. Transfer everything, the auto shops, your home, investment accounts, into the trust. You'll be the primary trustee, but here's the key. We'll appoint an independent professional fiduciary as successor trustee, not a family member, someone who can't be manipulated. Over the next 3 days, I lived in Foster's office. We drafted documents, revised clauses, built what he called fortress protection. I transferred ownership of Wilson's Auto, all 3 locations, into the Wilson Family Trust. My house in North Phoenix, my investment portfolio, everything. The trust document specifically excludes family members from trustee positions, Foster explained as I reviewed the final draft. Even if they get a court order, the assets are held by the trust, not by you personally. They'd have to prove the trust itself was invalid. Can they do that? Not easily. Not when we've documented everything properly. I also scheduled medical examinations. If James was going to claim I was incompetent, I needed proof otherwise. At Arizona Medical Center, I submitted to a battery of tests. A neurologist named Dr. Sarah Chen had me recite number sequences backward, draw clock faces, answer logic puzzles, walk heel to toe down a hallway. Mr. Wilson, your cognitive function tests place you in the superior range for your age group, she said, reviewing the results. Your memory, executive function, and reasoning skills are excellent. There is absolutely no indication of any impairment. I scheduled a second examination at Desert Health Institute. 2 days later, same results, same confirmation. I collected the written reports like ammunition. On the 4th day, I met Catherine Palmer at Phoenix Fiduciary Services. Gray-haired, professionally detached, she reviewed the scope of assets that would fall under her oversight if I became truly incapacitated. You understand, I'm independent, she said. I have a fiduciary duty to you, not to your family members. If someone tries to manipulate the trust for their benefit, I'm legally obligated to resist. That's exactly what I need. By evening, I sat in my home office reviewing the completed documents, trust agreements, medical reports, original screenshots. I created a secure folder on my computer labeled Defense, uploading scanned copies of everything. My finger hovered over the mouse as I stared at James's name in the message thread. The hurt was still there, sharp and deep, but something else was growing alongside it, something colder. Richard, this protects my assets, I'd said during the signing. But what about justice? What about making sure they don't try this with someone else's father? Foster had paused, choosing his words carefully. Right now, we're building your defense. What comes after? That's your decision. I closed the folder and leaned back in my chair. The defense was solid. My assets were protected. James could file his petition, and it would collapse against the fortress we'd built. But was that enough? The question sat in my chest like a stone as darkness fell outside my window, and I realized with absolute clarity that protection wasn't sufficient anymore. I wanted consequences. 6 days later, I stood in my bedroom, adjusting my collar in the mirror. The reconciliation dinner was scheduled for 6:30, and I'd been practicing my expression all afternoon, cautious optimism mixed with a grandfather's desperate hope for family healing. My phone rang. Richard Foster's name appeared on the screen. I almost declined. The timing was terrible. I needed to leave in 10 minutes. But something in the rapid succession of rings made me answer. Richard, I'm actually heading out to... Sir, you need to see this. His voice was tight, urgent in a way I'd never heard before. I have a family commitment. Can this wait until... Wait, this is precisely about him. I froze, one hand on my car keys. About who? Your son. Check your email. I'm sending something now. I sat on the bed as my phone chimed. The attachment loaded slowly. A PDF with official court letterhead. My eyes tracked across the title. In the matter of the guardianship and conservatorship of Percy Wilson. The room tilted. Percy, are you there? I'm reading it. James had filed a petition with Maricopa County Superior Court this morning. While I'd been choosing what shirt to wear to our reconciliation dinner, my son had been submitting documents to a judge claiming I suffered from advanced dementia and couldn't manage my financial affairs. The petition was thorough, detailed, devastating if it were true. Alleged incidents of confusion at my auto shops, conversations I supposedly couldn't follow, appointments I'd missed, employees I'd failed to recognize. All fiction. Reported financial mismanagement, unpaid bills, bounced checks, suspicious withdrawals. Complete fabrication. My shops were thriving. I hadn't bounced a check in 30 years. Then I reached Dr. Timothy Morrison's psychological evaluation, dated 2 weeks ago. The patient presents with significant cognitive decline consistent with moderate to severe dementia, Morrison had written. Memory impairment, disorientation, inability to manage complex financial matters. Recommendation: immediate protective intervention, including guardianship and conservatorship, to prevent financial exploitation or self-harm. I'd never met Dr. Morrison, never been evaluated by him, never even heard his name until I'd seen it in Amanda's text messages. Percy, look at page 12, Foster said. I scrolled down. There was my signature on a consent form for psychiatric evaluation, dated 3 weeks ago. The penmanship was close, very close, but the angle of the Y in Wilson was wrong. The pressure on the P was too light. I never signed this, I said quietly. I know. That's forgery. That's a crime. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They were perfectly still, which was somehow worse. James filed a guardianship petition with Maricopa County Superior Court this morning, Foster continued. He's asking for emergency temporary conservatorship over your assets and person. The hearing is scheduled for next week. But I'm supposed to have dinner with him tonight? My voice sounded hollow. He said he wanted to apologize, to make things right. That dinner was part of the plan. Look at page 12 of the petition. He claims you've been receptive to family assistance and agreeable to signing necessary documents. He was going to get more signatures tonight to strengthen his case. I walked to my home office, pulling up the document on my computer for a larger view. I read every page carefully, cataloging the lies. Then I retrieved my medical reports from the desk drawer, the examinations Foster had insisted on, and placed them beside the keyboard. Dr. Morrison's fabricated evaluation was supposedly from 2 weeks ago. My actual examinations at Arizona Medical Center and Desert Health Institute, conducted after I'd discovered the plot, showed perfect cognitive function. The dates told the story. James had paid Morrison to write a fraudulent evaluation. Then he'd forged my signature on a consent form to make it look legitimate. All while planning the dinner where he'd get me to sign more documents, probably disguised as family trust papers or healthcare proxies. I picked up my phone and called James. "Dad, are you on your way?" His voice was warm, eager, fake. I made my voice weak, apologetic. "James, I'm so sorry. I've come down with something, feels like food poisoning. I don't think I can make it tonight." A pause, just a fraction too long. "Food poisoning? That's unfortunate. Are you sure you shouldn't go to the hospital? I could come over and help you with—" No. I injected a tremor into my voice. "I just need rest. We'll reschedule soon." "Right, sure." He agreed too quickly, frustration bleeding through his careful concern. "Get some rest, Dad." I ended the call and photographed the forged signature with my phone, texting it to Foster with a single message. "I never signed this. Meet tomorrow morning, first thing." Then I walked to my living room window. The desert landscape stretched beyond my backyard, all saguaro silhouettes and purple mountains in the dying light. I was still dressed for the dinner I wouldn't attend. Button-down shirt, pressed slacks, the watch James had given me for my 60th birthday. He'd planned everything. The reconciliation dinner was meant to be the moment I signed away my autonomy, completely unaware that the real court petition was already filed. He'd probably prepared documents that looked like family trust agreements, but were actually additional consent forms, medical releases, power of attorney grants. I'd have signed them while he smiled, and Amanda poured wine, and they talked about healing and family and moving forward together. And then next week, at the hearing, James would present all those signatures to the judge as proof I was agreeable and cooperative with the guardianship plan. "You wanted to make me helpless," I said to my reflection in the darkening window. "Let's see how that works out." The war had new rules now. James had forged my signature, filed false documents with the court, paid a psychologist to fabricate a medical evaluation. This wasn't family dysfunction anymore. This was criminal fraud. And I had every intention of showing my son exactly what happened when you underestimated a man who'd built 3 successful businesses from nothing. 2 days after canceling the dinner, I needed to clear my head. The forged signature kept appearing in my mind, that false Y in Wilson, the wrong pressure on the P. I grabbed my golf clubs and drove to Desert Pines Senior Center, where I'd occasionally played over the past year. The course was easier than my usual country club, and nobody there asked questions about business. The morning sun was already fierce when I reached the practice green. I set up balls mechanically, trying to focus on my stance, but my putting was terrible. Every time I lined up a shot, I saw that petition instead, page after page of lies about my mental competence. "Your grip's too tight." I looked up. A woman in her early 60s stood a few feet away, wearing a volunteer badge that read, "Dorothy Turner." She had kind eyes and silver hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. "Tension in your hands travels up your arms," she continued, demonstrating a proper stance. "Try loosening your fingers, letting the club rest naturally." I attempted another putt. The ball rolled wide. "It's not really about golf, is it?" Her voice was gentle, professional, like she'd spent years reading people's distress. Something about her manner made me lower my guard. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the fact that she was a stranger who didn't know James, didn't know my business, didn't have any stake in my life. Within 20 minutes, we'd moved to a shaded patio table, and I was explaining everything. Dorothy listened without interrupting. When I finished, she nodded slowly. "My friend Margaret, her nephew, tried something similar 5 years ago," she said. "Filed paperwork claiming she couldn't manage her finances. What saved her was evidence. Daily logs, witness statements, proof she was living a normal, competent life. "I have medical evaluations," I said. "Clean bill of health from 2 doctors. That's excellent. But you also need to show daily competence. Are you documenting your business decisions? Keeping records of your activities? The court wants to see ongoing capability, not just a snapshot." She pulled a small notebook from her volunteer vest and started writing, not about my story, but practical actions. Daily activity logs, witness statements from colleagues, photographs engaging in complex tasks. Her former nurse's training showed in her methodical approach. "I coordinated patient care for 30 years, she explained. I've seen competency evaluations go both ways. The ones that succeed for the patient always have documentation. My phone rang. Marcus Chen, my parts supplier. Percy, just checking in. Everything okay with the business? Someone called asking about our relationship, said they were concerned about billing issues. I felt ice form in my chest. What billing issues? That's what I said. There aren't any. You've never missed a payment. I just thought it was strange. I thanked him and hung up. Dorothy watched my expression change. 15 minutes later, my accountant called. Got a strange inquiry from your daughter-in-law. She was asking about your financial management, whether I'd noticed any confusion in your instructions lately. The third call came from Frank Rodriguez, my head mechanic for 12 years. Boss, I got a weird call from James today. Frank sounded uncomfortable. He was asking if you've been forgetting things at the shop, making odd decisions. I told him you're sharp as ever, but I thought you should know. What exactly did he ask? If you've been confused about orders, missing appointments, that kind of thing. I shut it down fast, but Percy, what's going on? I ended the call and stared at my phone. 3 calls in an hour. 3 of my key business relationships, all within days of me canceling that dinner. They're poisoning the well, I said quietly, calling my business contacts, planting doubts. Dorothy's expression hardened with recognition. Then you need to document everything. Every call, every conversation, and you need to reach out to those contacts yourself before the rumors take root. She tore a page from her notebook and wrote her phone number. Call me if you need someone to talk to who understands these situations. What you're facing, it's not just legal, it's psychological warfare. I stood, pocketing her number. Thank you for listening, for the advice. Don't let them isolate you, she said. That's how these things work. They cut you off from your support system, make everyone doubt you. Stay connected, stay visible, keep living your life competently and publicly. Driving home, I made a mental list of every business relationship James and Amanda might target. My banker, my insurance agent, the leasing company for my shop locations, anyone who might testify about my capability or lack thereof if this went to trial. They weren't just attacking me in court. They were attacking my reputation, my credibility, the foundation of trust I'd spent 30 years building in the Phoenix business community. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the truck, phone in hand. Dorothy's words echoed, psychological warfare. Fine. If they wanted war on multiple fronts, I'd fight on multiple fronts. But first, I needed to understand what made them this desperate. People didn't forge signatures and destroy their relationships with their father without serious motivation. I needed to know what James and Amanda were really running from. The next morning, I sat across from Richard Foster as he introduced a man named Martin Reeves. Early 40s, sharp suit, carrying a leather portfolio that looked well used. Martin's helped me with corporate investigations, Foster explained. Background checks, financial due diligence. He's thorough and discreet. I authorized a full financial background check on James and Amanda. Whatever was driving them to commit fraud, I needed to understand it. Look for debt, I told Reeves. Look for pressure. Find out why they need my money so desperately. 3 days later, Reeves returned with a thick folder. I read it in Foster's office, using a yellow highlighter to mark key figures. James had accumulated $180,000 in online poker debts, multiple gambling platforms, many operating in legal gray areas. The losses stretched back 18 months, accelerating in recent months. Amanda had borrowed $90,000 against an old property in Tempe, a house they'd owned before buying their current place. The loan application claimed home improvements, but the money had disappeared into their joint account within weeks. Your son has a serious gambling problem, Reeves said, pointing to a specific section. These aren't casual bets. He's in deep with some offshore platforms that don't take kindly to non-payment. The biggest concern is this offshore processor. They've been known to sell debts to collection agencies that operate in legally questionable ways. I studied the numbers. So if someone bought this debt, they'd have leverage over James. Significant leverage, especially if the buyer could threaten to expose the gambling activity or call the debt immediately. I photographed specific pages with my phone and texted them to Foster. Can we buy this debt? Foster looked up from his computer. Potentially. These offshore groups often sell distressed debt at a discount. They'd rather get something than nothing. Make it happen, anonymously. Over the next 2 days, Foster negotiated through legal intermediaries I'd never meet. Meanwhile, I tried to maintain normalcy. I ran my shops, reviewed inventory, met with customers, and I met Dorothy for coffee. She'd suggested a quiet cafe in Old Town Scottsdale, away from my usual haunts. We talked about things unrelated to legal battles, classic films, desert hiking trails, her volunteer work with cognitive therapy patients. When she laughed at my dry observations about difficult customers, something tight in my chest loosened slightly. "You seem lighter today," she said, touching my forearm. "Less burdened." "I'm taking action instead of just reacting. It feels different." "Action is good, but don't forget to live while you're fighting." Her eyes were serious. "My friend Margaret. She got so consumed with her legal battle that she forgot to enjoy anything. Don't let them steal that from you, too." 2 days later, Foster called. The offshore group was very motivated to sell. They'd rather have 60 cents on the dollar now than chase your son through international jurisdictions. We acquired the debt for $108,000. It's now officially assigned to Wilson Financial Trust. The paper trail is clean, airtight, everything legal and traceable. James will receive notification within 48 hours that his debt has been transferred to a new creditor. I leaned back in my office chair, fingers steepled. My son owed me $75,000, and didn't know it yet. The debt gave me legal standing, the ability to call it due, the power to expose his gambling to courts, to Amanda's family, to anyone who might be funding their lifestyle. That evening I met Dorothy for dinner, a small Italian place she knew, family-owned, with checked tablecloths and candles and wine bottles. We talked about her late husband, 15 years gone now, and my wife, who'd passed 8 years ago. Shared grief created unexpected intimacy. My phone buzzed during dessert. Foster's text. "Debt acquired. Documents being filed tomorrow." I silenced the phone and turned my full attention back to Dorothy. She was describing a hiking trail she loved in Sedona, her hands moving as she talked, her face animated. I realized I was genuinely interested. Not strategizing, not plotting, but actually listening to another person talk about something they cared about. "You should come with me sometime," she said. "The trail's not too difficult. Beautiful views." "I'd like that." Driving home later, I caught myself smiling. Not the cold satisfaction of gaining leverage over James, but something warmer, unexpected. Dorothy had reminded me that life existed outside this battle, that I could pursue justice and still experience moments of genuine connection, that revenge and living weren't mutually exclusive. The debt notification would reach James tomorrow. He'd discover that his financial leash now belonged to someone he didn't know. Yet. But tonight, I'd had dinner with an interesting woman who made me laugh and think and feel something other than cold calculation. Maybe Dorothy was right. Maybe the best revenge wasn't just destroying James's plans, but refusing to let him destroy my capacity for anything else. 2 days later, James received the letter. I wasn't there when it happened, but I could imagine the scene perfectly. His office cubicle in Scottsdale, probably eating lunch at his desk, signing for a certified letter without thinking much about it, then opening the envelope. Notice of debt assignment, his $75,000 offshore gambling debt transferred to Wilson Financial Trust. Wilson. My name, my trust. Amanda started calling an hour later. 7 calls in 20 minutes. I was at the shop reviewing inventory when my phone started buzzing like an angry wasp. I picked it up once, saw her name, set it face down on my desk. By the 4th call, she was leaving voicemails. I listened to them later, hearing her voice shift from careful politeness to barely controlled panic. "Percy, please. We need to talk about this misunderstanding." Next message, 10 minutes later. "Percy, we were only trying to help. Please call me back." By the 7th, "Please, we can fix this, please." I deleted them all. That afternoon, a courier delivered Foster's response to their incompetency petition. I got the call from Richard an hour later. "It's done," he said. "Medical evaluations from Dr. Chen, Dr. Palmer, and the third opinion from Dr. Washington at Phoenix Cognitive Center. All 3 explicitly stating no cognitive impairment, plus the forensic analysis proving the signature forgery. And the criminal complaint? Filed with the Attorney General and the District Attorney. The letter makes it clear. Forging signatures on court documents is a felony under Arizona revised statutes." I thanked him and hung up. Then I sat at my desk for a long moment, staring at the wall calendar. The court hearing was scheduled for 3 days from now. 3 days until James and Amanda had to explain to a judge why they'd forged my signature, fabricated medical evidence, and attempted to steal my life's work. That evening, Dorothy arrived at my house with a bag of groceries. We'd planned to cook dinner together. Her suggestion, something about how cooking with someone tells you everything you need to know about them. She unpacked ingredients on my kitchen counter: chicken breasts, vegetables for salad, fresh herbs. I showed her how I seasoned the chicken, standing close behind her, guiding her hands on the knife when she asked how to butterfly the breast properly. We turned toward each other at the same moment. Her face was inches from mine. Neither of us moved away. "You're good at this," she said quietly. "Cooking?" "Being present, despite everything else happening." I'd told her about acquiring James's debt earlier, not boasting but explaining my strategy. She'd listened without judgment, her hand resting on my forearm. "You're protecting yourself," she'd said. "That's not the same as cruelty." Now, in my kitchen, with flour on her hands and laughter in her eyes when I accidentally knocked over a spice jar, I realized something startling. I hadn't thought about James or the court case for nearly an hour, the longest break my mind had taken in 2 weeks. We cooked together in comfortable rhythm, occasionally bumping shoulders, passing ingredients without needing to ask. The chicken came out perfectly. The salad was crisp and bright. We ate at my dining table, talking about everything except legal battles, her volunteer work, my auto repair stories, shared memories of hiking trails we both loved. After dinner, we washed dishes side by side. I washed, she dried, and I told her about James receiving the debt notification. "What are you planning to do with it?" she asked, casual tone masking a serious question. My hands stilled in the soapy water. "Use it as leverage. Make him understand he can't destroy people without consequences." "And after the court case?" I met her eyes. "I don't know yet. Part of me wants to forgive him. Part of me wants to watch him fail. I haven't decided which part wins." She touched my arm gently. "That's honest. I appreciate honest." We finished the dishes in silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the silence of two people who didn't need to fill every moment with words. When she left around 10, she squeezed my hand at the door. "See you Saturday? We could visit that botanical garden I mentioned." "I'd like that." I watched her drive away, then returned to my kitchen. The space still smelled like herbs and lemon. 2 wine glasses sat drying on the rack, evidence of an evening that had nothing to do with revenge or justice or court battles. Evidence that I was still capable of something other than cold calculation. My phone buzzed. A text from Foster. "James and Amanda will receive the criminal complaint notice tomorrow morning. Expect reactions." I set the phone aside and walked to my back window. The desert stretched dark beyond my yard, city lights twinkling in the distance. Let them panic, I thought. Let them understand what it feels like to watch your life come apart because of someone else's choices. But standing there in my kitchen that still carried the warmth of Dorothy's laughter, I realized something unexpected. Their panic didn't give me the satisfaction I'd anticipated. What gave me satisfaction was the chicken dinner, the shared dishwashing, the comfortable silence. Revenge was necessary, but it wasn't enough. I was learning the difference. 4 days later, on Saturday morning, I watched through my front window as James's car pulled into my driveway. I'd been drinking coffee, enjoying the quiet before Dorothy and I were supposed to visit the botanical garden. Now I set the mug down carefully and observed. Amanda sat in the passenger seat, shoulders rising and falling with deep breaths, composing herself. James checked his reflection in the rearview mirror, adjusting his collar. They were preparing for a performance. I pulled out my phone, opened the voice recording app. Arizona was a one-party consent state. I could legally record any conversation I participated in. I tested it briefly, speaking my name, playing it back. Clear audio. I started a new recording and slipped the phone into my shirt pocket, microphone facing outward. Then I opened the door. "Dad," James tried to smile. It didn't reach his eyes. "Can we talk, please?" I stepped aside, letting them enter. We settled in my living room, me in my armchair, them on the couch facing me. Amanda clutched a tissue. James sat forward, hands clasped. "Percy, we made terrible mistakes." Amanda's voice trembled. "We were scared of losing you, scared of what would happen to the family business. We went about it all wrong." I said nothing, just watched. James leaned forward. "Dad, I know what the documents say, but it wasn't meant to hurt you. We thought we were protecting the family assets. I should have talked to you directly." "So filing for guardianship was protection?" My voice was flat, emotionless. "We were trying to help." Amanda's tears came on cue, but I noticed she'd been holding the same tissue for 10 minutes without actually using it. You're alone, managing everything yourself. You thought you'd take it all without asking. Silence. James's eyes darted to Amanda, back to me, searching for signs of softening that didn't come. 40 minutes of this. Apologies that sounded rehearsed. Explanations that shifted from misunderstanding to concern for your welfare to increasingly desperate justifications. I sat perfectly still, hands resting on the armrests. Occasionally I nodded slightly, encouraging them to keep talking. They filled every silence, each word digging them deeper. Amanda paced now, frustrated by my lack of response. Her carefully constructed narrative was cracking. We didn't want to deceive you, she burst out suddenly. We just thought you would give us the business yourself. You're getting older and we're family. It made sense. Why fight us when you could have just transitioned things peacefully? There it was, the truth under the performance. James tried to recover. We needed the money so badly you don't understand. The pressure we've been under... I stood. The court hearing is in 3 days. You can explain all of this to the judge. I'm sure they'll find your reasoning compelling. Amanda's face went white. Percy, please. I think you should leave now. They left. James looked back once from the doorway, mouth opening like he might say something else. Then he just turned and walked to the car. I stood at my door for several minutes after they drove away, watching the empty street. Then I walked to my office, connected my phone to my computer, and backed up the recording to 3 locations: hard drive, cloud storage, USB drive in my safe. Their own words admitting they'd expected me to simply hand over my business, that they'd needed the money badly enough to commit fraud. Dorothy arrived an hour later. I was still in my office when she knocked. Hey, she said, reading my face immediately. What happened? I showed her to my back patio instead of suggesting we leave for the botanical garden. We sat in the shade overlooking the desert landscape. I didn't speak at first, neither did she. We just existed in shared silence. Finally, I told her about James and Amanda's visit. Then I played her the recording. She listened without interrupting. When it finished, she took my hand. You could have yelled, she said quietly. You could have said horrible things. You didn't. You let them convict themselves with their own words. I'm proud of you. I wanted to scream at them. My voice was tight. Tell them exactly what I think of their betrayal. But you didn't, because you're better than they are. Something in my chest loosened. Dorothy saw it, the moment I'd been holding together through sheer will, suddenly safe to fall apart slightly. She moved closer on the patio bench. You don't have to be strong every second, not with me. I looked at her then, really looked, the silver in her hair catching the sunlight, the kindness in her eyes that didn't come from naivety, but from having seen enough of life's cruelty to value its rare moments of tenderness. Thank you, I said, for being here, for understanding why I had to let them hang themselves. I understand justice, she replied. I understand boundaries, and I understand that you're one of the good ones, Percy Wilson. We sat there for another hour, talking and not talking, her hand in mine. At some point I told her about my wife, how she died 8 years ago, how I'd thought that part of my life was over. Maybe it doesn't have to be, Dorothy said softly. I turned toward her, she turned toward me, and then we were kissing. It was gentle, tentative. 2 people who'd forgotten what this felt like and were rediscovering it together. When we pulled apart, she smiled. I've wanted to do that since the golf club. Why didn't you? You had enough happening. I wanted to wait until you had space in your life for something good. I touched her face. I have space now. The court hearing was in 3 days. James and Amanda would face a judge with their forged documents and fabricated evidence. I had medical reports, forensic analysis, recorded admissions, and a criminal complaint filed with the state. But sitting on my patio with Dorothy's hand in mine, tasting her kiss on my lips, I realized the most important victory wasn't in that courtroom. It was here, now, reclaiming my capacity for connection, for tenderness, for hope. James had tried to take my life. Instead, I'd found a new reason to live it. 3 days later, I walked up the courthouse steps with Richard Foster on my left and Dorothy on my right. Monday morning, 10 o'clock. The marble building loomed against a cloudless Arizona sky. Ready? Foster asked, adjusting his briefcase. Dorothy squeezed my hand. I nodded. We passed through security, navigated hallways that echoed with our footsteps, and found courtroom 4C. James and Amanda were already seated at the petitioner's table with their attorney, a nervous-looking man named David Chen, who kept shuffling papers like he could reorganize them into a winning case. Judge Patricia Hamilton entered at exactly 10. Late 50s, sharp eyes, no-nonsense demeanor that reminded me of my best high school teacher. She reviewed the case file briefly, then looked up. Let's proceed. Mr. Chen, your client filed this guardianship petition. Present your case. Chen stood, clearing his throat. Your Honor, we believe Mr. Percy Wilson requires assistance managing his affairs. While recent medical evaluations show current competence, we're concerned about long-term patterns documented where? Judge Hamilton interrupted. Well, that is, we have witness testimony that... From whom? Chen faltered. The petitioner and his wife observed concerning behaviors. The same petitioner who would benefit financially from this guardianship? The judge's tone could have cut glass. Continue. I watched James across the courtroom. His jaw was clenched tight. Amanda stared at the table. Foster stood when his turn came. He presented evidence methodically, like dealing cards in a winning hand. Medical evaluations from 3 independent physicians, Dr. Chen, Dr. Palmer, Dr. Washington. Each report explicit, no cognitive impairment whatsoever. Then the forensic document analysis. Foster displayed the forged signature alongside my genuine ones on the courtroom screen. Even I could see the difference. The wrong angle on the Y, the light pressure on the P. Mr. Chen, Judge Hamilton said, studying the comparison, your client submitted a consent form with what your own expert witness now admits appears to be a forged signature. How do you explain this? Chen stammered. Your Honor, there may have been administrative confusion. Perhaps Mr. Wilson signed a different document, and... Administrative confusion doesn't explain 3 different forensic analysts, all concluding this signature is fraudulent. She looked at Foster. Is there more? Yes, Your Honor. An audio recording made legally under Arizona's one-party consent law. I watched James's eyes close as Foster played it. The courtroom speakers broadcast every word. Amanda's voice. We didn't want to deceive you. We just thought you would give us the business yourself. You're getting older, and we're family. It made sense. James's voice. We needed the money so badly, you don't understand. The silence after it finished was absolute. Judge Hamilton removed her glasses, cleaned them slowly, replaced them. When she spoke, her voice was cold and precise. This petition is dismissed with prejudice. Mr. Wilson, I apologize that the court's time was wasted with this matter. Mr. James Wilson, you are ordered to pay respondents' legal costs in full, $15,000. Additionally, I'm forwarding this evidence to the county attorney for review of possible criminal charges. The gavel came down, case closed. I stood, shook Foster's hand. Dorothy smiled at me, not triumphant, just present. We walked toward the exit together. Behind us, I heard James's chair scrape back. Footsteps. His voice loud and desperate in the courthouse hallway. Dad, wait, we're still family. You can't just cut us off. Dad! I didn't turn around. Dorothy's hand was in mine, steady and warm. Keep walking, I said quietly. We kept walking. In the parking lot, I stopped beside my truck and looked back at the building. James stood on the courthouse steps, Amanda pulling at his arm, trying to lead him away. He looked small from this distance, defeated. I felt no triumph, no satisfaction in his failure, just relief that it was over. Dorothy leaned against me. How do you feel? Tired, I said honestly, and ready to start thinking about something other than court cases. Good, she kissed my cheek, because I have some ideas about that. We drove home through midday Phoenix traffic, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't think about revenge or justice or legal strategies. I thought about what came next, what I wanted to build instead of what I needed to protect. The war was over. I'd won. Now I needed to figure out what victory actually meant. The morning after the hearing, I gathered my 3 senior managers in my office. Frank Rodriguez, who'd been with me for 12 years. Lisa Chen, operations manager for 8. Tom Bradley, part supervisor for 6. I'm stepping back, I told them. Not selling, not closing, just stepping back. Frank grinned. About time, boss. I built this business over 35 years. It's been my life. But I realized something recently. It shouldn't be my entire life. You all keep it running. I'm just making it official. I'd already hired a professional manager through Foster's connections, someone to handle daily operations while I transitioned to a consulting role. available for major decisions, but no longer managing every detail. I walked through the shop that afternoon, stopping at each bay to shake hands with mechanics who'd worked for me for years, some for decades, thanking them, explaining that wages and benefits wouldn't change, watching their concern transform into genuine happiness for me. 2 days later, I met James at a cafe called Desert Grounds on the outskirts of Phoenix, neutral territory, a corner table by the window where we could talk privately. He arrived 10 minutes late, looking exhausted. The confident swagger I remembered was gone, replaced by someone who'd lost everything and knew it. I had 3 documents ready. I slid the first across the table. Debt forgiveness. The $108,000 I paid for your offshore debt. Forgiven. His eyes widened. The second document. A check for $50,000. Payable to your creditors, not to you directly, to clear your other obligations. He reached for it. I held up the third document. In exchange, proof of enrollment in a certified gambling addiction treatment program, plus documented employment within 60 days. I slid the final paper across. And this, my updated estate plan. He read it. His face went white. You're leaving everything to a charity? The Desert Seniors Support Foundation. People who need help, not people who tried to steal from me. You're cutting me out completely? His voice rose. After everything, you're destroying our family. I didn't destroy anything. You did that when you tried to have me declared incompetent. I'm giving you more than you deserve. Take it or face criminal prosecution. Your choice. The anger drained out of him like air from a punctured tire. He stared at the documents, hands shaking. What if I fail? What if I can't? Then you fail. But you'll fail as your own man, not as someone waiting for their father to die so they can inherit his life's work. He signed all 3 documents. His signature looked nothing like the forgery he'd submitted to the court. Smaller, defeated, but genuine. I left the cafe, lighter than when I'd entered. That chapter was closed. James had a chance to rebuild his life on his own terms. Whether he took it or not wasn't my responsibility anymore. 2 days later, Dorothy and I loaded her sedan with weekend bags and a cooler of sandwiches. We were taking her car, not my truck. A deliberate choice. Ready for an adventure? She asked, sliding into the driver's seat. More than ready. We drove west toward San Diego. Dorothy's hand rested on my knee while I watched the Arizona desert give way to California hills. We stopped for lunch in Yuma, switched drivers, and she fell asleep in the passenger seat somewhere past the border. I glanced at her peaceful face, then back at the road ahead. This was the first time in weeks I'd thought about the future instead of the past. We reached San Diego by late afternoon and found a small hotel near La Jolla. As sunset approached, we walked to the beach, shoes off, feet in cold Pacific water, waves breaking around our ankles. Dorothy leaned against my shoulder. You did the right thing, giving him a chance but not rescuing him. I kept thinking about what you said, about your friend Margaret, how the fight almost consumed her. I don't want to be consumed. I want to live. She squeezed my hand. Then let's live. The sun descended into the ocean, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. I watched the horizon and understood with absolute clarity. Winning wasn't about defeating James. It was about reclaiming my right to choose my own life. I'd protected what I built, secured my legacy, given my son a chance at redemption while maintaining boundaries that honored my own worth. But the real victory was standing here with Dorothy, feeling the ocean spray on my face, planning road trips and quiet dinners and lazy Sunday mornings instead of court strategies and evidence collection. True freedom wasn't about destroying toxic people. It was about choosing to walk away from them and toward something better. What are you thinking? Dorothy asked. I pulled her closer. That I spent 2 months fighting for justice, and I won. But this, right now, this is what winning actually feels like. She smiled. Good, because this is just the beginning. The waves crashed. The sun set. The Pacific stretched endless before us. And somewhere behind me, Phoenix and all its battles felt very, very far away. I'd survived my son's betrayal, built defenses, fought in court, offered mercy with boundaries. Now I was free to do the only thing that ever really mattered. Live well. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.